Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. Today, we take a deep dive into one of Mexico's most notorious serial killers, Fernando Hernández Leyva, and the gruesome crimes that shocked the nation. Join us as we explore the chilling details of this case and honor the lives lost. Yes, due to it being Cinco de Mayo, I will be making an episode about a Mexican serial killer. Before I get into that, I want to wish you a happy, belated May the 4th be with you. Enjoy having fun drinking tonight, trying out some Mexican foods. You deserve it. You all deserve fun tonight. Even if you're not at the age of drinking, have fun, enjoy yourself. But stay safe. And, as always, just be happy tonight while doing so. The only ones upset should be those grumpy white middle-aged sluts who complain about everything. Everything younger people do. Now let's get started. The discovery of the bodies linked to Fernando Hernández Leyva began in the early 1990s. Many people in Mexico had been missing, and it was so suspicious how there were very few ties as to where they were. A total of 33 victims were found across 5 states: Morelos, Jalisco, Colima, Guanajuato, and Michoacan. These victims were identified through DNA testing, with the cause of death being ruled as murder, either by excessive beating, strangulation, or stabbing. The bodies were sent to the coroner's offices in each of these states for further examination, as each state in Mexico has their own coroner's office. The funerals spanned a period from 1982 to 1999, reflecting the years it took to collect and identify all the bodies. These services took place in the following 5 cities: Cuernavaca, Lomas de Zapopan, Colima City, Guanajuato City, and Morelia. The visitations were held at notable funeral homes, being Galloso, Divina Providencia, Magaña, Amistad, and Latinoamericana Morelia. The Catholic masses for the victims were conducted at the following churches: Parroquia de San Jose, Parroquia Espíritu Santo, Catedral Basílica Menor, Parroquia de San Roque, and Catedral de Morelia. Finally, the victims were buried in cemeteries, being Cuernavaca, Zapopan Centro, Colima, Santa Paula, and Morelia. On September 23, 1996, several years after the people had started disappearing, Fernando Hernández Leyva, the suspect of those disappearances, was captured in the city of Lomas de Zapopan, in the state of Jalisco. This was after a tense standoff with police. Fernando and an accomplice had taken a family and journalist hostage. This journalist was identified as Carlos Cabello Wallace. They were being held hostage in a private residence. The standoff, which lasted for 7 hours, was broadcasted on live television. Despite having previously escaped custody twice in 1982 and 1986, as he had been detained for a robbery before. This time, he was securely apprehended. During his arrest, Fernando confessed to killing over 100 people and kidnapping 6. He stated, "I killed them all because I had to. I didn't know what else to do." That is the English translation of his Spanish confession. However, he later recanted many of his confessions, claiming they were coerced through beatings and threats against his family. This interrogation was held at the Lomas de Zapopan police station. He had confessed to killing over 100 people. Despite his retraction, investigators linked him to 33 confirmed murders across 5 states, as I mentioned earlier. Fernando was 44 years old at the time of his arrest. The accomplice arrested with him was 32-year-old Ramon Campos Guriño. He was not tied to any murder. However, he was charged with kidnapping and grand theft auto crimes. Fernando's arrest led to the capture of 3 accomplices that were tied to the murder. Mateo Diaz Padilla, Jesus Telles Lopez, and Saide Castillo. These individuals were arrested after a police raid in a home near the station, where several firearms were found. Fernando made his first court appearance on April 4th, 1999, at the courthouse in Cuernavaca, Morelos. He was confronted with a wide array of charges, including 137 counts of murder, 6 counts of kidnapping, and several counts of robbery. The presiding judge at the Cuernavaca Superior Court of Justice, Magistrate Luis Gamboa, ordered that Fernando and his accomplices continue to remain in custody pending trial. They had been detained at a penitentiary in Morelos known as Cerezo Atlachuaya. Magistrate Alejandro Carlos Espinosa oversaw the proceedings in the case, and the case was prosecuted by José Leonardo Castillo Pombo. This case was eventually assigned to Judge Alejandro Carlos Espinosa. Fernando and the 4 accomplices pleaded not guilty to the charges. Fernando was charged with 137 counts of murder, 16 counts of robbery, and 6 counts of kidnapping. Ramon was charged with 6 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of grand theft auto. Then the remaining accomplices, Mateo, Jesus, and Saide, were charged with 20 abetting charges, 12 charges for illegal weapons possession, 16 charges for robbery, and 6 charges for kidnapping. Ramon Campos Guriño took a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. He pleaded guilty to the kidnapping charges, and with the deal, the grand theft auto crime was dropped. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, a sentence for all kidnapping charges combined. The rest refused to take plea deals and chose to go to trial instead. Fernando and his 3 remaining co-defendants were tried together and found guilty on most charges. Fernando had been tried for 137 counts of murder, 16 counts of robbery, and 6 counts of kidnapping. The others had been tried for 20 abetting charges, 12 for illegal weapons possession, 16 for robbery, and 6 for kidnapping. The 3 accomplices were adjudicated by their assigned judge not guilty of all kidnapping charges, not guilty of 4 robbery charges, but guilty of 20 abetting charges, 12 illegal weapons possession offenses, and 12 robbery offenses. Many of the victims' bodies have never been found, but they were tied to the case through DNA. Fernando was found guilty of every single charge. After announcing the verdict, Judge Espinosa announced that Fernando would be sentenced to 60 years in prison as to all the murder charges combined together, and that the rest of the convictions would be vacated. The main prosecutor was José Leonardo Castillo Pombo, but due to several defendants being involved, 3 assistant prosecutors have been assigned to this trial. They were Miguel Aguilar Amao, Felix Arrelando, and Maria Antonieta Fregoso. Then the defense attorneys were assigned as follows: Urea Lenis for Fernando Leyva, Jair Fernando for Mateo, Guidoblo Hernandez for Jesus, Pedro Luis Zuleta for Zaire, Cesar Emilio Perlata for Ramon. Judge Espinosa sentenced Mateo and Jesus to 30 years in prison for the abetting charges combined together, and the rest of their convictions were vacated. Lastly, Zaire was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the abetting charges combined together. Also, the rest of the convictions were vacated. All sentencings were imposed immediately after the verdicts were announced. Ramon, who took a plea deal, served his sentence at the Reclusorio Norte prison in Mexico City and was released for good behavior on April 23, 2005. Zaire was released for good behavior on May 19, 2019, after about 5 years before his release date, after having spent nearly 20 years at the Reclusorio Sur prison in Mexico City. Mateo was released on April 28, 2025 for good behavior after having served about 25 years at the Altiplano prison in Santa Juana, Mexico. Fernando Leyva is currently incarcerated there. His projected release date is 2049. Jesus was released on March 3rd, 2025 for good behavior, after having served about 25 years at the Puente Grande prison in Jalisco, Mexico. Now, let's discuss appeals. Ramon waived his right to appeal with the deal he took. The others did in fact appeal. But on March 18, 2004, the appellate court in Mexico City rejected all arguments. The case of Fernando Hernández Leyva and his accomplices is one of Mexico's most chilling serial killer stories. The lasting impact of these murders, combined with the significant trial and legal proceedings, forever changed the way Mexico approached cases involving serial killers. As we reflect on this dark chapter in Mexican history, let's remember the victims and the families affected by this heinous crime. Thank you for joining us on this Cinco de Mayo special of Strawberry Inc. We wish you all a joyful celebration filled with family, unity, and remembrance. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, stay safe and be kind. Special thanks to all those who helped us bring this episode to life. Have a good rest of your day.